Welcome to Bibliophiles Anonymous, episode 14. I'm Denise.
And I'm Jess.
And first off, we wanted to wish everybody a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever you're going to be celebrating, or, happy having a day off work if you get one, if you're not celebrating anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been kind of a crazy time trying to get ready for it, especially when we've got two kids running around here, but haven't had as much time to read as I would like. And that always makes me grumpy, but that's okay.
Well, I haven't read much. It hasn't been lack of time. It's been Lord of the Rings Online has devoured my soul again.
Yeah, I've had a little bit of that problem myself. It's okay. It's a fun problem to have.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
That and the British girl who does the daily video blogs on YouTube. Yeah, she has devoured the part of my soul that Lord of the Rings Online hasn't. I'm addicted. It's like a soap opera, okay? I can't help it. And I've made it to 2012. So I've watched almost all of January 2012, so eventually I will be caught up.
Well, what are you going to do once you're finished?
Well, she uploads a new one every day.
Oh, yeah, but it's only going to be like a short video. It won't be watching for long periods of time at that point.
Well, that'll give me more time to play Lord of the Rings Online.
Oh, well, there you go.
I won't have to decide between, oh my God, do I watch Caters or do I play? It'll be I can watch Caters for 15 or 20 minutes and get today's video out of the way, and then I can go play Lord of the Rings.
Well, pretty much, I haven't really finished anything except for the book that we're going to talk about today.
Neither have I.
But I did start something, just because it's been sitting on my bookshelf for a while, and I've read it before, but it's been a really, really long time, and I absolutely love this book series, and I have since I was a kid, and so I just decided, what the heck, it's a busy time of year, and I just need something that I can just kick back and relax and just flat out enjoy. Mm-hmm. And so I started reading A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline.
I've never read it.
I still can't believe that. You have got to read it. Oh my gosh. That's like a classic. That is my childhood. It's so good. And I actually just within the past year found out that there were actually 5 books in the series. I only thought there were 4, and I'd only read 4, but then I had to finally replace my old copies of it because they were falling apart. There was no spine anymore.
Yeah.
And there's not much else that holds books together.
No, not really.
No. So I finally went and bought just the nice box set. Still the paperbacks, but they're like in a little box, and they sit really nice on the shelf. And there were 5 books in the box. And I'm like, what the heck? Where did this book come from? So, that was kind of fun. But, yes, I think I'm going to just read through those. They're pretty quick because they're written maybe even slightly younger than young adult, maybe middle grade.
Yeah.
But they still hold up. They're really, really good. So you have to read them. I know you've got so many other things to read, but
I haven't actually started anything else because I just finished the book we're discussing today.
Oh, okay. Well.
So I haven't had a chance to start anything else. I'm sort of stuck. I don't know if I'm probably going to go ahead and finish the Iron Fae books.
Oh, good.
And then I'm going to read Graceling by Kristin Cashore because I have heard that this book is really, really good.
Okay.
And I have Graceling and Fire, which is book 1 and book 2, and I know for a fact my library has book 3. So I have access to the entire series.
Always a plus.
Yeah. See, I have this problem. If somebody recommends me a book and it's the first book in a series, if I can't easily get my hands on the entire series, or, at least what of it has been published, I won't start reading it till I can.
Right.
I have that problem. I can't. I have several series sitting on my shelf now that the reason I haven't read them is because I can't easily get a hold of all the books in the series. It's like, if I love this, I'm going to want to read all of it.
Yeah. You're not going to want to have to be stuck and wondering what's happening and you can't find out.
Right. So
yeah.
that's a friend of mine recommended me the Seven Waters books by Juliette Marillier, or Marillier, I don't know. I don't really know how to pronounce her last name. The point is, I have book 1 and book 2. There's like 4 or 5 of them. My library does not have the others.
Uh-oh.
And McKay usually doesn't have them either. I look every time I go, but they never have them. So that's why I haven't read those yet.
Uh-huh.
Because I have book 1 and 2, and they're fantasy, and chances are I'm probably going to really like them when I read them. So I can't, because I can't get them all.
No, I understand. I mean, I'll sometimes, if I'm looking for a brand new series, I'll often try and see if it's a complete series that's been published and there's not like additional books that are coming, because I just get really impatient.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole fence with the Harry Potter books when they were being published, once I finally found them and got into them, I mean, I thought I was going to die before book 7 was going to come out.
Oh, yes. But
I couldn't wait.
But
it was
the midnight release parties were so much fun.
Well, yeah, that's true, but not all books have those.
No.
But, you know, it was so hard to wait. So a lot of times when I want to start a series or a new series, I'll see how many books there are and if it's done. If they said, okay, there's 3 books or there's 4 books and that's it. Of course, I have had it where, for example, with Cassandra Clare with the Mortal Instruments, where it was like, okay, she wrote a trilogy, it's done, yay. Oh wait, here's book 4. What?
And now book 5.
And now book 5.
And now a new series. And then a new one coming in 2015.
Yeah, so that was unfair.
Well, that's like when I started reading the Chloe Neal books. When I found Chloe Neal, Some Girls Bite was the only book she had published in the Chicagoland Vampire series. We're up to book 6 now. I've had to wait on every one of them to come out so I could read it, but they're worth it. They're that good. So I mean, it just depends on whether what you're waiting for is worth waiting for.
That's true. I mean, I'm not averse to waiting for if they're a really good book, like for the Harry Potter series, and for the Mortal Instruments series and her other series that are, you know, part of that whole story world.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if I'm going to jump into something new, it's like I kind of want to at least have a good. If there's going to be 5 books in the series, then at least give me 3 that are already out here, and, you know, being able to actually get to them is good too. But my library is usually pretty good about that.
My library has gotten a lot better, but again, I think it's because they started ordering so much more young adult stuff, quote, right. Young adult, which some of it is not actually young adult, some of it is just fantasy. But, you know, if they want to call it young adult and stick it in the young adult shelf, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. I will read it. So that's why I got so excited after we discussed the Demon King on here. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to read those for a while because my library didn't have them. And I was like, I can't afford to go buy all of them. You know, I guess I'll just have to wait and look when I go to McKay and see if they have any of them. Because I know only like the second one, maybe the third one are out in paperback, and the fourth one's just now come out in hardback.
Right.
But then right after we discussed it, like maybe 2 weeks after we discussed it, I walked into my library and they've got them sitting on top of the shelves.
And you were like, yay!
Because they were new. They had just got them in. I'm like, oh, you're going with me.
They read your mind.
They did. And my library's awesome like that. And if there is anything that I can't find that I really want them to get, I can tell them and they'll order it for me. So
librarians are awesome.
They are.
We love librarians.
I wanted to be a librarian.
I did too.
And then I found out that you have to have a master's degree.
I either wanted to be a librarian or I wanted to own a bookstore.
I still want to own a bookstore.
Well, let's get together and open a bookstore. How do we do that?
Well,
we'll find someplace to meet halfway.
I can say one of us is going to have to move.
Oh, that would be hard. Oh, well.
I would love to. I would, around here, like, find a little place that I could put in a little bookstore and do trade credit and stuff like that. It would be awesome. I would be in heaven.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, let's go ahead and start talking about the book that we read for this week. This book is the Book of the Month Club pick for the Tavern. And there is a thread discussing it. There haven't been that many people posting. So far, I think just Jess and I have actually finished the book. There's a couple of other people, I think, that are going to join us a little bit later.
Well, that's because Marita ran off to New Zealand for her sister's wedding.
Oh, darn it.
And Peregrine went with her.
How dare he want to go with his wife to a wedding.
So that's why she hasn't posted anything, because she's, busy.
Right. Well, I'm sure once they get back that there'll be a lot more discussion. But you can find us at the tavern. I'll go ahead and give the address now, and we'll probably give it again towards the end of the podcast. But it's at www.maltavern.com. And you can find the book of the month discussion is in the forum room called the Great Hall, and that's where we'll be. And don't have to just talk about this book. You can talk about whatever books you want to. We like talking about books all the time. So.
Oh yeah, we have a lot. Our old book of the month. I can't talk. Our old book of the month threads are still in there. If you want to join those discussions, or if there's something you want to talk about, and there's not a thread for it, start one.
Yeah, absolutely. We love having new people come in and having new discussions pop up. It's always a good way to find new things or to find other people who are just as excited about things as you are. Sometimes you don't know.
Yeah.
And I've seen before where somebody will post, "Hey, has anybody read this book or this series?" And everybody will pop up, "Oh my gosh, I love it!" So you never know what's gonna resonate with people. So yeah, by all means, come over and start a new thread. If you don't see any that you want to talk about, start one yourself or join in one of the ones that's already going on.
Yep.
So the book of the month for this month was Night Train to Rigel by Timothy Zahn. And both Jess and I want to start off by saying that neither one of us are really big science fiction fans.
No, I mean, I've read some science fiction before, but
yeah.
I've never really read any that just really turned me on to the genre, which is weird because I love technology. I'm such a techno geek. I mean, I don't go anywhere without my iPhone. Right. I love technology, but I've never really been able to get into science fiction. It's weird.
Well, I've read, there's some science fiction that I've really enjoyed, and I don't know, sometimes there seems to be a trade-off because they focus more on the technology than they do really developing the characters. That's the main problem that I've had with a lot of science fiction, is that a lot of the characters just seem really two-dimensional.
Yeah.
And for me, I really need to have some kind of like emotional connection with the character.
Yeah.
I really need to care about them. I really need to get inside their head and know what's going on, how they feel about things. And if that doesn't happen, then I always have a hard time enjoying the book, because it's almost like I don't care what happens to them. And if you don't care what happens to them, then what's the point?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't so much my problem in this case. My problem, I read fantasy. I can very easily suspend my beliefs and accept things like hobbits and dwarves and elves and things like that. I have no problem with that. But when you give me science fiction and you're going to give me aliens, I want something that is alien. I want something that is not anything like anything here.
Right.
The whole idea is that they're aliens. They're from other worlds. They're not going to be humanoid. They're not going to look like us or talk like us or act like us. And we get giant militant chipmunks.
Yes. I loved that kind of concept. I don't know why. And on the copy of the book that I have, there's actually a picture of one of them in the corner. And I mean, it does not look like a chipmunk you want to mess with. It looks very threatening for a chipmunk. I mean, they're supposedly the size of a human, but they're always have guns and knives, and the number of weapons that they're carrying is kind of like a status symbol for them. So if they're higher up in the culture, then they have even more weapons.
Yes.
But their faces look like chipmunks. I don't know why that made me giggle.
I mean, I want tentacles and 16 eyes and completely different anatomy, not something that can be related to something that we have on Earth. To me, that kind of defeats the purpose of them being aliens.
Right. If you were just going to write something that was about a bunch of people who were exactly like humans, then why write science fiction?
But now if you're writing a fantasy story and you want to give me giant militant chipmunks, I'm okay with that because we live on Earth and we can have that here.
Sure.
You know.
I don't want that to be.
Well, no. But I'm just saying, if you want to, write a fantasy story that is set on Earth where we actually have chipmunks, that some wizard has created a race of giant chipmunks, okay, that works for me, but not space aliens. I'm just saying. I mean, and it's not that the story was bad. The story was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't, the writing was okay. I think it just wasn't my cup of tea.
And that's perfectly fine. I mean, not everybody's going to enjoy everything. And I'm the first person to say that if you read something that's, not your thing, that's perfectly up to you. Not everybody's going to love every single thing. And so let's start talking about the story just a little bit. The main character is Frank Compton, and he's from Earth and used to work for the government. And the story opens up where he gets a message, and this man who was delivering him a message basically immediately falls down dead.
Mm-hmm.
And with the message was a ticket for him to get on the quadrail. Now, I thought the quadrail was pretty cool.
Yes, that part was pretty neat. The idea of, basically a train in outer space.
Yeah, the quadrail is this huge train system that connects, I think it's 12 different worlds in the galaxy, and it travels faster than the speed of light. It covers, light years in, minutes or something like that. And it connects all of these main points throughout the galaxy. And so that idea, it was kind of an old-fashioned idea in a way, like the old, train stories, like stories about the Orient Express and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Where you're going to have interesting things happen if you put like a volatile situation and a bunch of characters on a train where they can't get off and they're forced to interact with each other. You're going to have, hijinks ensue.
Yes. Well, like I said, that part was cool. And then there's Beta, the woman that he ends up traveling with.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently her job is to sit around and be worried.
Yeah, and I've actually found that this is a common complaint with this book. Because I was just kind of flipping through some of the reviews on Goodreads. And basically the people who hired Frank Compton to get on the quadrail and travel around, this group of people that built the quadrail, they're called the Spiders. And they basically look like spiders, but almost like, I guess, robotic spiders.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're made out of metal, or metal-like substance. I don't know if it's actually metal, but that's what they look like, so we go with it.
Yeah.
And they're trying to stop somebody who's trying to take over the world or destroy the quadrail system or compromise it in some way. And so they've hired Frank to help them find information based on his previous employment working with the government and the intelligence service.
Yeah.
But getting back to Beta, yeah, she was the only female character in the book, and she didn't really, I mean, she's an important character, and especially at the end when you find out exactly what she is, because you know that she looks human, she sort of pretends to be human, but you know right away that she's not completely human.
Yeah.
And towards the end, you'll find out exactly what she is. We're not going to say it here because you have to find out if you really want to know.
That was kind of a curveball. I didn't see that one coming.
But yeah, she spent, just for being the one female character in the book and, being like the secondary leading character, I just wanted her to have a bit more backbone and a bit more spunk and
a bit more personality.
That would have worked too.
I mean, she really, I mean, it was just like, are you sure you know what you're doing? I don't think we need to do this. I don't think that's a good idea. I mean, that's pretty much all she did for the first 90% of the book.
Yeah, and if Frank was going to go someplace else in the train or someplace else wherever they were stopped, because they went to a couple of the different stops. If he was going to go anywhere, she usually stayed in her room and waited for him to come back. A couple times she would research something through like their computer system or whatever, but she would never want him to go, and she would always question everything. And it was just, you wanted her to do more, and maybe that's because we enjoyed so much all the kick-ass heroines that we talked about a couple shows ago.
True.
And she's pretty much the opposite of that.
Yeah, she doesn't really... I mean, you find out later on that her motivations and everything, that she is a little more noble than you think she is.
Right.
But still, and like, really, you're going to sit in your room and twiddle your thumbs while he goes out and does all this stuff, and you're going to worry, and you're not actually going to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, and I understand she was worried. I mean, they're doing some pretty serious stuff, and they're getting involved with a bunch of people who try to kill them a couple times, and that's certainly worrisome. But there should be more to a character than just, oh, should we be doing this, or oh, that's not a good idea, maybe we should just like hide or whatever. It started to get on my nerves.
Yeah, I mean, okay, if she starts out that way, fine, but let's have some character development and have her decide that she's not just going to sit around and worry, she's going to actually do something. And I don't know, it just bugged me, and I don't think it actually dawned on me that she was the only female in the book.
Yeah, she pretty much is. I mean, there's some of the different races and the different species that it's a little bit hard to tell, but I'm pretty sure that all of the main characters, or at least all of the ones that were named, that they were all called he. Sometimes it, if it was like androgynous or something like that. I don't think any of the spiders have any kind of gender, but so it was either an it or a he. There was no she.
Yeah.
Except for maybe a couple of throwaway characters somewhere in like the station. I think there might have been a waitress or something like that.
But as far as the speaking characters that they interacted with, she was the only female.
Yeah.
And that kind of bothers me.
Yeah. And I haven't read enough science fiction to know whether that's just a thing, if they think that sci-fi is more, a guy thing, and so they're not going to have a lot of really prominent female characters because of that. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of the stereotype, I think.
Yeah.
But I know lots of girls that enjoy sci-fi. In fact, it was a girl who recommended this book for the book club.
Yeah, I believe it was Savannah.
Yeah. I couldn't remember if it was Savannah or Marita.
I believe it was Savannah.
Okay. Yeah.
But I know her and Marita both said that they enjoyed Timothy Zahn's writing. But I'm pretty sure Savannah's the one that actually suggested it.
Uh-huh.
But, I don't want to give the impression that the book was bad. The book wasn't bad.
No.
And two, it was written from a first-person point of view, and sometimes I have problems with first-person because it's tricky to do it right.
Yeah.
And you kind of get the sense that you're in Frank's head and you're supposed to know what he knows, but you don't. You know that he knows something, but you don't know what it is, and that kind of annoys me because it's like, okay, this is from his point of view. I should know what he knows.
Right.
And I usually like stuff that has mystery to it because I like being able to figure it out, and none of the stuff in this book did I figure out before it actually told me what was going on.
No, I didn't either. And sometimes when that happens, that's just because the author really, wrote a good mystery and made it complex and confusing, and did it well. Because, especially if it's any kind of a mystery or a suspense or any kind of intrigue, you don't want it to be completely obvious right away. Oh, well, the butler did it.
Right.
You don't want that. And so if it's something where it comes in, it's a complete twist ending, it's completely unexpected, and you're just like, wow, that was completely out of nowhere. Okay, I had no idea. That's one thing.
Right.
But when it's not even really twists and turns, but it's almost like you don't feel like you know exactly where they're going because they haven't shown you.
Right. I mean,
yeah.
When you're doing first person and you're in somebody's head, obviously you don't tell the audience everything, but you need to give them enough that the ones that are good at working out stuff like that are able to work it out on their own.
Well,
Like,
yeah, and well, like you said, you don't need to know everything about a first person narrator. You don't need to know about, their second cousin twice removed. But if there's a lot of things that they know about this particular situation that they're in, then you should know that too.
right, you need all the information to be able to put things together.
Right.
I mean, this is one of those that in hindsight I can sort of see, but at the same time, it's like, I should have had more information to work with in the story, because I remember, well, I only read it today, so it's not that hard to remember. But he talks about, how suddenly everything clicked into place, and I'm like, what? What's clicking into place? Because I don't get it.
I don't see the clicking.
Nothing's clicking for me. And I'm like, did I miss something? But I really don't think I missed anything. I think it just wasn't there.
Yeah. I mean, there were like I said, there were a lot of things that were really interesting about the book, and I loved the setting. I thought the setting was really good, and I thought that the enemy that they were fighting was interesting.
Yes, now that was creative. I liked the
Yes.
way that was handled.
Yeah, basically, there's this I'm not even sure exactly what to call it. It's this entity that is trying to control people, that kind of tries to take over people's bodies and take over the world, the galaxy,
Yeah.
whatever. And so trying to figure out exactly, because that's kind of the overarching bad guy, and you don't realize that that's the overarching bad guy until towards the end, because you think that it's a much smaller crime, conspiracy, what have you, until probably the last third or quarter of the book, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden it's like, whoa, this is a much bigger situation than what we thought. And
Yeah.
and once we got to that point, I think the beginning of the book, where it was, I think they probably could have used a lot more setup in the beginning, because I started getting confused as to who all of the different races were, and I kind of got it after a while, but there's a lot of information thrown at you really, really quick, and just kind of expected you to know things that you didn't know yet.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that sci-fi does sometimes. It sometimes turns it off for me, because they'll talk about this technology like you should already know what it is, and I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can tell what it is just by how they're using it, and you're like, oh, well, that's like a communications device or something like that. But I didn't get that with some of the stuff in this.
Yeah.
And so some of the things that they're doing, I'm like, what are they doing? I don't understand. But once they got to the end, once they started talking about the Madra, and when they got to that planet system, and then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, this is good. Now I liked the ending a lot.
Yeah.
A lot more than I liked probably the first 2/3 of the book.
Yeah. It's one of those that, sort of gets really interesting when they start revealing what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And it's like, you could have revealed this a lot earlier and worked the plot around so that we knew what was going on while you were trying to solve the problem.
Yeah, I think that was another big part. It was like, a little bit of setup, and then just all of these events that we're going through, and then the very, very end, it was like this reveal, this reveal, this reveal, this reveal, this reveal, and explosion at the end of all of these things happening. Whereas if it should have been just a little reveal here and there throughout the whole thing, I think it would have been a lot more connected.
Yeah. I really don't think that there's 5 of these books.
Yeah, I think so.
I really don't see myself reading them unless I run completely out of anything else to read.
But we know that's not going to happen.
Because, I mean, I'm kind of curious as to, after, the whole reveal about Beta at the ending and the decision that she had to make and everything, I'm kind of curious as to how that's going to work out, but I don't think I'm actually curious enough to press through another one of these books.
Uh-huh. I think what I would have to do is, now that I've read the whole thing and I know where the book is going, I think I would have an easier time understanding the first part. So I would have to read this book again before I even thought about reading the next ones.
Yeah. I mean, and I may do that. I may give it a chance and reread it later now that I know what to, and everybody talks about they don't like spoilers. They don't want people to tell them what happens. But, it really doesn't spoil books for me if I know where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I read an article one time that it's been scientifically proven that people do enjoy the books more if they actually know what's going to happen.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Most people. Now, there's exceptions to that, and there are people who don't, but it's never really bothered me. So, I mean, I think if I had have known some of the stuff that's revealed at the very end of, like, I would say definitely in the last 10% of the book, because I was reading the ebook, so I had a percentage instead of a page number.
Right.
And I would say definitely some of the stuff that I didn't find out till the last 10% of the book, had I known that when I started, it would have been more interesting.
Right. No, I can completely see that. I've done that with other book series too. I know I did that with A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin, just because there's so many characters that I had to, once I finished the whole series, or at least as far as he's gotten in writing it, I had to go back and reread at least the first book, because I finally knew who it took me 4 books to know who everybody was.
Yeah.
And how they were all connected. So then you go back to the first book and you're like, oh, okay, I see what that person's doing. I didn't catch it the first time because I didn't know who they were, but now that I know who they were, now I see how their plot kind of got started, and it made more sense.
Yeah.
Not that it didn't make sense before, but now you see more of the layers when you know where it's going and what they're thinking.
And I think we both kind of had the same problem when we did Cushion's Dart by Jacqueline Carey.
Yes, that was quite a while ago.
Yeah, but there was so much information to try to absorb in the first few chapters that, I mean, it was just basically like this huge information dump right at the beginning, and you're like, what do I do with all of this?
Yeah, and that was a fantasy. That wasn't science fiction at all. That was straight up epic fantasy.
Yeah.
And you're right. I had the same problem with that because it wasn't the technology this time. It was just things like about the culture or about the different kinds of magic and things that went on that the author kind of just expected you to know right away and didn't give you any explanation for it. They just expected you to know what it was and then kept going.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what it was, and it took me quite a while to know what this particular thing meant. And by that point, I had missed out on a lot of other things because I didn't know exactly what they were talking about, so I didn't understand it, and so my brain just kind of glossed over it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a limit to how much information you can absorb, and there's a limit to an author being able to throw something. I mean, if it's something small, yeah, they can throw it at you with context, and you can figure it out.
Right.
But there was so much that in that book that it was just like, da 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 da, here it is. You'll figure it out later. We're just gonna move on.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was more of a structural problem than anything.
Right.
But it was kind of the same thing here. It's like you've got all of these races that are being thrown at you in the first couple of chapters, and trying to sort out who's on what side and who's with the bad guy and who's not with the bad guy, and what, it was unnecessarily complicated, I think.
Right. I think it could have been, there were a lot of, I don't want to say red herrings necessarily, but there were a couple of them, and I don't think they were needed.
Mm-mm.
The story was complex enough without having to bring in like Frank Compton's old boss.
Well, now I have a feeling that was a setup for the next book.
And maybe it is.
Because, the last thing that he says about what his old boss had hired him to do,
mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that that's probably a setup for, if not the next book, then certainly a later book in the series.
But then the other thing, too, is that, that you had the boss and then that other guy who was kind of like a bodyguard.
Yeah.
And you could tell by the end of the book that they were very important, but they were only in the end of the book.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen them if they were going to show up and all of a sudden be like main characters almost, or at least secondary characters. Then I think they should have been more involved.
Yeah.
Instead of just like randomly showing up, hi, we're here, we're gonna, go through the rest of this adventure and help save the day, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's someone out there who loves it. Like I said, I know Savannah and Marita both said that they really like Timothy Zahn's writing, and something else by him I might like. It's just, I just don't really think this one was for me. But I tried.
Well,
I gave it a try.
He's written a lot of Star Wars novelizations.
I think that's what Marita has read a lot of, and I think she's read a lot of those.
Yeah, I think she said that those were really good as well. So, and I would be willing to give those a try, and I would be willing to try and read this one again. And sometimes also, if there's other books that I'm more interested in reading, sometimes it's hard for me to get into something that's completely different, or completely outside of what I'm used to. And that might have been the case here as well. It may not have been in the mood to read something this different. So that might have been a big part of it too.
Yeah, I mean, and I have that problem too. I mean, if I'm used to reading a lot of young adult stuff, then it's hard for me to shift my brain into epic fantasy.
Yeah, I've had that same problem. In fact, that was another problem with the Kushiel's Dart book, I think, because that's very much epic fantasy, like we said, and I hadn't read a really big epic fantasy in a while, and so my brain didn't want to process it.
Well, I'm going to have to get my brain back into it, because when we do Rhapsody, it's not as complex, and I mean, I really enjoyed it the first time I read it, but it's pretty epic, so. But my goal for next year, we both did the reading goal on Goodreads and a certain number of books that we wanted to read, and I will do that again next year. I'm probably going to go for 60, start at 60 like I did this year. But I'm
still working on my goal. My goal is going to be complicated. Just because I do that to myself.
My actual goal for next year is going to be more of, I'm going to read the stuff that is on my bookshelf that I have never read. And I am going to try to get through a good portion of those so I can decide if it's something that I want to keep, that I will read again, or if it's something that I can take to McKay and trade in. Because I got to looking when I shelved my books, and probably at least from a third to a half of the books on my shelf I've never read. But a lot of it too is because they're series that I have started buying, like the Piers Anthony Xanth novels. I started collecting those a long time ago, and I actually have, I think, without any gaps in the series, at least the first 10 or 15. There's almost 30 of those now.
Wow.
Yeah, the man is 3 days older than dirt, and he's still writing books. He's old. He seriously is in his 80s, I believe. And he's still writing Xanth novels.
Oh, good for him.
And I have read the first 2 of those, and they were pretty good. But it's been so long that I don't really remember a lot about them, so I think I'm just going to start, because my books are arranged alphabetical by author and then in series order, because I'm like that.
I understand.
Makes it easier to find something. If I'm looking for something specific and they're in alphabetical order by author's last name, I don't have to look at every title on my shelf.
Right.
So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with the A's, and I'm going to start with Piers Anthony, and I'm going to read the Xanth book, and I'm just going to read my way through my bookshelf next year.
That's not a bad goal. I know that I had tried this year to read or reread a lot of the stuff on my shelves, not because I had a lot that I hadn't read. It's just I had a lot that I hadn't read in a really long time. And I think it was not this year, but maybe last year, when I had just gotten on Goodreads, and my first thought was to immediately add all of my books so that my bookshelf on Goodreads would look the same as my bookshelf at home. And so I was like, well, the best way to do that is to go ahead and start rereading everything, and as I'm doing it, start putting them on Goodreads, and eventually I'd get there. But then I started, borrowing books from the library and getting a bunch of new ones, and so that goal kind of got a bit, put on the wayside.
Yeah. But that's kind of my goal for next year, and there's, like I said, it's mostly big long series like Xanth. And I do want to reread all of my Mercedes Lackey stuff, and I will probably start rereading all of that when we do Arrows of the Queen as the book club book.
Okay.
Because I don't want to start it now and read it and then reread it in the same year, you know?
Right.
So I will probably just wait, and when we do Arrows, I mean, I'm going to have to read at least the entire Arrows trilogy when we do that one.
Uh-huh.
Because I can't just read the first book and not read the other two, completion's sake, because I love them so much. But mostly I'm going to try to read stuff that I own that I've never read. That's my goal, because I have a lot of it. I have more than I realized I did. I'm like, I've only read 3 books on that shelf. I might want to work on that.
Yeah, because that's a really big shelf.
Well, I mean, like, each individual shelf, I'm like, okay, I've read all the ones on that shelf. I've only read 3 on that shelf above that. You know, I mean, it's like, okay, there's a lot of these I haven't read. I need to work on that.
Yeah.
So that's my, like, I have the Dune books by Frank Herbert, and I've never read them.
Oh, wow. Okay, now those are science fiction.
Yes, I've seen the movie.
Okay.
So I know, you know, I kind of have a clue what's going on, but...
You know a little bit about what you're getting into.
Yes.
Okay. The book's better than the movie, by the way.
Well, isn't it usually?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, see, I've been trying to figure out what my reading challenge is going to be for next year, and I mean, we'll publicly state what our reading challenges are going to be and have it, you know, set in stone when the time comes, which, gosh, it's getting close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe this year's almost over. But anyway, there's a lot of book lists. I like book lists. And there's been a lot of book lists that I've, you know, kind of definitive sets of books, like what people consider like the best fantasy books or the best young adult books. And I think I want to start like finding some of those lists and just go through them and see how many of them I've read, how many of them I need to read. And I know one list I'm going to try and do at least a little bit on because it's just the way I am. I love that big, huge list, the 1001 books you must read before you die. I have read like 30-something of them.
I doubt I've read that many.
And, well, a lot of it had to do with school. You'll be surprised how many of them, like even you read in high school. There were quite a few of those.
Yeah, see, the problem is, though, the ones that were assigned to me in high school, I didn't actually read them.
Oh, well, then that's cheating. That doesn't work for the list.
Look, of all of the ones that were assigned in high school, I only read one of them. Well, okay, technically 2 of them, because I read Great Expectations because we had to read that one in class. But all of the others, never read them. Except for To Kill a Mockingbird, I read that one. But I had read it before it was assigned to us, so...
Well, I had, and going through my English major at college, I had a lot of them that I could check off pretty quickly. But then I've also just found them at my library. Just, you know, gone through the book and said, okay, this one looks interesting, and found it at the library. And you find a lot of varied books, you know, because I do sometimes get in a rut where I'll only read, like, one particular kind of book, whether it's, like, one kind of section of fantasy or what have you. And sometimes I need to kind of force myself out of my comfort zone because I'll read just about anything. And most of the time I'll enjoy just about anything. And even if it's, like, for this book, for example, where it was not entirely my cup of tea, but there was, you know, a lot of things that I liked about it. So trying to look for different series like that and different lists like that, it kind of helps me kind of broaden my scope a little bit, you know?
I like lists too, but I like making lists.
You have made a very impressive list.
I like I said, my main goal, and this is actually, I've told people this is my New Year's resolution, is the reading of stuff that I own but have never read. Last time I went to the library, I just dropped books off. I didn't get anything new because I knew I was trying to finish the Quadrille book, and I knew I needed to finish the Iron Fae books. So I'm like, I'm not going to get anything. I'm going to wait a few weeks, and then when I go back, maybe they'll have even more new stuff.
Well, there you go.
So, but yeah. I mean, all in all, I gave Night Train to Rigel. I think I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads. I mean, like I said, it wasn't bad. I think either I just wasn't in the mood or it's just not my cup of tea.
Right. And that's kind of how I felt too. I think I probably need to distance myself from it a little bit and then go back and reread it again. I might do that.
Yeah.
But I would probably say 3.5 stars myself.
I think the average on Goodreads was like 3.8.
Yeah. So, but yeah, if science fiction is your thing, then you would probably enjoy it a lot more.
Yeah.
So, and definitely if you have read this book or if you have any more insight into this book, please contact us and let us know. And join in the forum topic over at the tavern, or email us, or find us on Twitter. Either way.
Yep.
But I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for tonight. Just let you know, give you our information like we always do. Our email is bibliophiles.podcast@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter at BibAnonPodcast. And again, at the tavern, which is www.maltavern.com.
Yep, and we would love to hear any kind of feedback you have.
Yes, feedback, book recommendations, any other questions, or comments about this book, about any of the other books that we've discussed previously, or any of the other topics, or any books that you would like us to talk about, or any other topics you would like us to talk about. Anything you want.
Good. We need topics. Please send us some topic suggestions.
Yes, we are starting to get to the end of the list of topics that we had come up with when we first started doing this podcast. So we could definitely use some more topic suggestions. So anything, we're game to talk about anything.
Yep.
So just let us know, email us, tweet at us, however you want to. You can also comment at the tavern or at our official website, which is www.bibliophiles-anonymous.com.
Yep. And we'll see you next time.
All right. See you then.
Bye.
Bye.